He was just 16. No record, no trouble, with no history of violence. But the minute they saw his skin, they saw guilt. Jeremiah Hayes was more than just a boy growing up in a tough neighborhood. He was the heartbeat of his family. A boy who knew what it meant to care deeply, to sacrifice without complaint, to dream despite the odds stacked against him. Every morning, before the sun even peeked through the curtains, Jeremiah was up. His mom worked 2 jobs, sometimes 3, to keep the bills paid. His little sister, just 8 years old, looked up to him like he was a hero. And Jeremiah never wanted to let them down. He worked hard at school, not just because he wanted good grades, but because he believed education was the only ticket out of a cycle that had swallowed so many before him. Teachers often said he had a quiet wisdom, the kind you don't see in kids his age. He volunteered at the community center, helping younger kids learn to read and stay out of trouble. He helped his grandma around the house, running errands, cooking dinner, making sure she never felt alone. The neighborhood wasn't perfect. Sirens blared more often than birds chirped. Trouble sometimes lurked behind the corners. But Jeremiah stayed clear of it. He was different. He had dreams. Big ones. That Saturday, he'd spent hours at the community center, stacking donated books, organizing after-school programs, and sharing smiles with kids who looked at him like he was their guardian angel. When he left, the sun was dipping low, painting the sky with soft shades of orange and purple. As he walked home, Jeremiah thought about the scholarship application he needed to finish, about the promise he made his sister to never give up, no matter what. He never saw the police cruiser until it was too late. His heart raced as the car pulled up beside him. The flashing red and blue lights filled his vision, and an icy chill swept through his veins. He froze, confused, scared, wondering what he could have possibly done wrong. The officer stepped out, eyes cold and hard, his tone sharp and accusing. Stop right there." Jeremiah's hands trembled as he raised them slightly, heart pounding louder than his thoughts. "I'm not doing anything wrong, sir," he said softly, voice cracking. But to them, his words didn't matter. To them, he was just another black teen in a hoodie, dangerous until proven innocent. Jeremiah's world turned upside down in those moments. The officer's grip was harsh, the accusations louder, the stares from bystanders judging, whispering. "I'm just going home," Jeremiah pleaded, but it felt like shouting into a storm. His dreams, his hopes, the fragile trust he had in the world around him, all slipping away as cold metal cuffs snapped shut around his wrists. And with that, Jeremiah's fight for justice began. A fight not just for himself, but for every black teen who had been seen not as a person, but as a threat. The cold metal biting into Jeremiah's wrists was nothing compared to the burning shame and fear swelling inside him. His heart thundered in his chest like a war drum as the officer roughly yanked him toward the squad car. Nearby, people stopped and stared. Some whispered, others shook their heads in silent resignation, knowing this scene all too well. Jeremiah's eyes searched desperately for a familiar face in the growing crowd. His mother, his sister, but they were nowhere to be seen. He was alone. "Why are you doing this?" Jeremiah's voice cracked, pleading for some humanity, some answer. But all he got was silence, or worse, suspicion. The officer barked commands, accusations laced with venom. "You fit the description. We caught you trying to steal. Don't play dumb." But Jeremiah knew it wasn't true. He hadn't stolen anything. Not a thing. His only crime was the color of his skin. Inside the squad car, the fluorescent lights flickered coldly over his downcast face. The city's usual noise felt distant, like a nightmare he couldn't wake from. He was taken to the station, where the interrogation room was unforgiving, harsh lights, a cold table, and voices dripping with doubt and accusation. Jeremiah repeated his story again and again, but no one seemed to want to hear it. Minutes stretched into hours. Fear twisted in his gut. What if no one believed him? What if this arrest was the end of his dreams? Then came the whispers, the rumors. The news spread like wildfire through the neighborhood. Jeremiah, the boy who volunteered, who dreamed, who helped others, was now a suspect in a theft investigation. His mother's heart shattered hearing the news. The phone call from the precinct came like a thunderclap. "I'm coming for you, baby," she whispered through tears, racing against time. But the system wasn't kind. It was cold, calculated, and quick to judge. Jeremiah's story was buried beneath layers of bias, assumptions, and prejudice. And outside the walls of that police station, the community's quiet, simmering anger began to boil over. This wasn't just about Jeremiah, it was about a pattern, a painful history repeated too many times. The courtroom was packed. Every seat filled with faces from the neighborhood, family, friends, activists, and even strangers who had heard Jeremiah's story and came to witness what justice might look like in a world that seemed determined to deny it. Jeremiah sat at the defendant's table, his hands still trembling from the weight of the past few days. The walls of the courtroom felt suffocating, like a cage built not just of bricks and mortar, but of centuries of systemic injustice. The prosecutor wasted no time, painting Jeremiah as a dangerous criminal, a threat to society simply because he was a black teenager in the wrong place at the wrong time. His words were sharp, slicing through the silence like a blade. But Jeremiah's defense attorney, a fierce woman named Ms. Reynolds, refused to let the story end there. With every fact, every witness she called to the stand, she slowly peeled back the layers of prejudice and lies. She called on teachers who spoke of Jeremiah's honor roll achievements, of his kindness and leadership at school. She brought in neighbors who vouched for his character, recounting the countless hours he spent volunteering and helping younger kids stay out of trouble. Then came the moment that silenced the room, the security footage from a nearby store, clearly showing another person, a white man, taking the items Jeremiah was accused of stealing. The video contradicted every claim made by the prosecution, leaving them scrambling for answers. Whispers rippled through the courtroom. The judge, known for his stern demeanor, leaned forward, eyes narrowing. Even he couldn't ignore the glaring evidence. But the battle was far from over. The prosecution pushed back, questioning the validity of the footage, suggesting it was tampered with. The tension was electric, every person in the room felt it. Jeremiah's mother sat at the edge of her seat, clutching her husband's hand, tears streaming down her face. She had fought for this moment, prayed for justice to finally pierce through the darkness. As the trial wore on, the community outside the courthouse grew louder. Protesters gathered, signs held high, chanting for fairness and an end to racial profiling. Their voices echoed a truth too long ignored. Inside the courtroom, the scales of justice teetered precariously. But for Jeremiah, this wasn't just about a verdict. It was about reclaiming his dignity, proving that the color of his skin didn't make him guilty. When the jury finally delivered their verdict, the room held its breath. The words rang out clear and undeniable, "Not guilty." A wave of relief and joy washed over the courtroom, tears of happiness mingling with exhausted smiles. Jeremiah's fight had been long and painful, but today, justice had a voice. Yet, the story didn't end here. The scars of accusation, the weight of suspicion, and the harsh lessons of prejudice would linger. This victory was a beacon, small but powerful, in a fight that still raged on for so many others like Jeremiah. The courthouse doors swung open, releasing a flood of emotion that had been building for months. Outside, the crowd erupted, cheers, cries, and powerful chants filled the air, shaking the very streets Jeremiah had grown up on. News cameras captured every moment. The story of a young black teen, wrongfully accused and finally vindicated, spread like wildfire. But beneath the surface of celebration was a complex mix of relief, anger, and determination. Jeremiah's mother hugged him tightly, her sobs raw with both joy and pain. "You were right all along, baby," she whispered through tears. "They didn't see your truth, but we did." Community leaders spoke to the press, calling this verdict a small victory in a much larger war. They highlighted how Jeremiah's case wasn't isolated. Too many black youths were still facing injustice every day, their voices drowned out by bias and fear. "We're proud of Jeremiah," said Pastor Williams, a longtime civil rights advocate. "But this isn't just about one boy, it's about a system that needs to change. We must keep fighting until no family suffers like this again." Social media exploded with hashtags like #JusticeForJeremiah and #EndRacialProfiling trending nationwide. Strangers from across the country reached out, sharing their own stories, their outrage, and their hope. Yet, while the community celebrated, Jeremiah himself struggled with the aftermath. The courtroom victory couldn't erase the nights of fear, the distrust in authority, or the harsh glances in public places. Every day was a reminder of how fragile freedom felt. "I'm free, but I'm not the same," Jeremiah confessed in an interview. "This fight has changed me, made me stronger, but also more aware of the battles we still have to face." His family vowed to use this moment to fuel advocacy, working with organizations dedicated to reforming police practices and supporting wrongly accused Black youth. The fight for justice was far from over, but Jeremiah's story became a beacon of hope, a testament to resilience, courage, and the power of standing up even when the world seems against you. The courthouse doors swung open, releasing a flood of emotion that had been building for months. Outside, the crowd erupted, cheers, cries, and powerful chants filled the air, shaking the very streets Jeremiah had grown up on. News cameras captured every moment. The story of a young Black teen, wrongfully accused and finally vindicated, spread like wildfire. But beneath the surface of celebration was a complex mix of relief, anger, and determination. Jeremiah's mother hugged him tightly, her sobs raw with both joy and pain. "You were right all along, baby," she whispered through tears. "They didn't see your truth, but we did." Community leaders spoke to the press, calling this verdict a small victory in a much larger war. They highlighted how Jeremiah's case wasn't isolated. Too many Black youths were still facing injustice every day, their voices drowned out by bias and fear. "We're proud of Jeremiah," said Pastor Williams, a longtime civil rights advocate. "But this isn't just about one boy, it's about a system that needs to change. We must keep fighting until no family suffers like this again." Social media exploded with hashtags like #JusticeForJeremiah and #EndRacialProfiling trending nationwide. Strangers from across the country reached out, sharing their own stories, their outrage, and their hope. Yet, while the community celebrated, Jeremiah himself struggled with the aftermath. The courtroom victory couldn't erase the nights of fear, the distrust in authority, or the harsh glances in public places. Every day was a reminder of how fragile freedom felt. "I'm free, but I'm not the same," Jeremiah confessed in an interview. "This fight has changed me, made me stronger, but also more aware of the battles we still have to face." His family vowed to use this moment to fuel advocacy, working with organizations dedicated to reforming police practices and supporting wrongly accused Black youth. The fight for justice was far from over, but Jeremiah's story became a beacon of hope, a testament to resilience, courage, and the power of standing up even when the world seems against you. In the quiet aftermath of the storm, Jeremiah found himself standing on the front porch of his home. No cameras, no crowds, just him, his mother, and the thick silence of healing. He looked out at the street where he once rode his bike as a child, the same street where he had been thrown against a police car, handcuffed, and accused of a crime he didn't commit. That memory still haunted him. The coldness of the steel, the way the officer wouldn't look him in the eye, the shame that soaked his skin like sweat. But something had changed. Now, when Jeremiah looked in the mirror, he didn't just see a victim. He saw a survivor, a fighter, a young Black man who had been tested and refused to break. His mother sat beside him, gently rubbing his shoulder. "You didn't just save yourself," she whispered. "You saved others too." She was right. The echoes of his story had reached far beyond the courtroom walls. Kids in his neighborhood started asking questions. Teachers began adjusting the way they handled discipline. Even the police precinct had initiated new training programs, small steps, but steps forward. And Jeremiah? He decided not to fade into the background. He began speaking at schools, telling his story with trembling honesty. He volunteered with the Jeremiah Initiative, working with teens who felt the system would never believe them. Every time he looked into their eyes, he saw his own 16-year-old reflection staring back. Fearful, angry, wanting to be heard. His message was simple. You are more than what they see. You are not a statistic. You are not a threat. You are a voice. Use it. The community honored him with a mural painted across the side of a local community center. It showed Jeremiah, standing tall, with broken chains at his feet and light radiating behind him. Below the mural, in bold letters, read the words, "Justice isn't a gift, it's a fight." That mural became a landmark, a gathering place, a visual reminder that change is born from pain, but fueled by hope. The cop who arrested Jeremiah? He was eventually fired. Public outrage and internal investigations exposed a pattern of racial profiling in his record. The system that once protected him had no choice but to let him fall. It was a bittersweet victory. No jail cell could undo the trauma, but accountability had finally come knocking. And for Jeremiah, justice wasn't just about punishing the guilty. It was about rebuilding what had been broken. Trust, safety, dignity. He sat down one night to write in his journal, a habit his therapist had suggested. "I used to think being black meant always watching my back, always shrinking myself to stay safe. But now I know, being black means surviving in a world that wasn't built for you, and still rising, still fighting, still loving, still living." Those words, written in the silence of his bedroom, held more power than any courtroom testimony ever could. Because in the end, this wasn't just about Jeremiah. It was about every black boy who walks home with his hood up, every mother who holds her breath when her son is 5 minutes late, every community that refuses to let another name be added to a list of hashtags. It was about truth, and truth, when spoken with courage, can shake the world. Justice is not automatic. It is demanded, fought for, and earned through the voices of the brave. Jeremiah's story reminds us that in the face of injustice, silence is complicity. But one voice, one fight, one truth can ignite a movement.